Welcome back to the It's Bigger Than Me podcast. I'm your host, Molly Trotter Gomez. You guys, I am so excited to be diving into. First, before I do that, has anybody ever wanted to write a book? I feel like there's so many people I come across. They're like, I have something in me. I don't know what it is, or maybe you do know what it is and you don't know the next steps. So I'm excited to dive into today's topic. And I had to start with that question because we have an absolute expert here with us, Camille. Oh my gosh, Camille, there's so much I could say about you. You have just been such a godsend in our Kingdom Alliance community. There are so many people that I know I personally meet that say, hey, I have a book inside of me. What's the next step? And Camille, I mean, she's going to give you more and way better background than I could. But just to kind of give you some cliff notes, she is the publishing director for the Kingdom Alliance Publishing House. She is the creator of the Kingdom Author Academy. And no matter where you are, when it comes to you have an idea for a book, you're in the midst of writing it, or now you want it to be published and you need some help or all the help, she really is just the catalyst for bringing this thing to life with our publisher as well, Michelle Schaefer. Here at Kingdom Alliance. So, Camille, I am very excited to have you here on the show because this is huge. This is massive. So, before we dive into just how grandiose this is and why you even wanted to be a part of birthing this thing, I would love for you to kind of share a little bit of your background with the people so they can get to know you more.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Molly. I am very, very excited to be here. And I just love talking about all things books and publishing and the benefits of really sharing our testimony, sharing our story with the world, and helping other people find hope and encouragement and a way forward through our writing. So, thank you for having me. That's one.
Yeah.
And then a little bit about myself. So, where do I start? It's so crazy. So, I have three kids. I'm married to my middle school sweetheart. And I went to the University of Miami after high school. I got my degree in marketing. I actually was at the School of Business Administration, and I had my initial major as entrepreneurship. But I really wanted to fly through school. I was like, I don't really want to be here any longer than I have to be. I was taking summer classes, and when time came to graduate early in December, I couldn't graduate with my entrepreneurship major because they had a sequencing of classes. And I don't know if that's ever happened to you or if you know anybody where it's like you have to take this class the semester before graduation and then this one the one before that one. And so I couldn't graduate with my entrepreneurship major like I had intended. So I finished with marketing, which was my minor anyway. And then years later, I decided to get my master's in creative writing. And this is kind of like skipping through a lot of my story because there was a point there where I was a realtor and I was trying to do real estate when the market crashed in 2008 in Miami. That was not going well for me. I took a couple detours right into event planning and doing all these other things, and eventually gave up working to travel with my husband, who was playing minor league baseball at the time. And I really wanted to support him and pour into our marriage. And at one point or another, when it was time for him to retire, I felt the nudge to go back and get my master's in creative writing because I knew I always wanted to write a book, right? And so many of us, like you said, I think it's over 80% of Americans, the statistics say, want to write a book, but only 1 or 2% ever do. And it's because of a lot of things we can talk about today, right? Why we actually don't get the book done. But for me, I was at home with a 2 and 3 year old boy, like 2 and 3 year old boys, right? They were very young. And I knew that I needed to go back and pursue this once and for all. And so at the worst, craziest, I mean, I would say it's like the craziest time to go back to school. I did that very thing, right? And I got my master's in creative writing with a focus on nonfiction. So like my passion is nonfiction. I love helping people write memoir and personal narratives, narrative nonfiction, even more so than business books, which I also coach and I also love. But there's just something about sharing your testimony, right? Sharing your story in the form of a narrative. That is what I'm so utterly passionate about, right? And that's really what led me here, right? I started my business in 2018 and I really bounced around. I was doing a lot of freelance writing until I realized, hey, I can help people write books. And that started in about 2019. And it's just been that's just been the beginning of what has led me here. And I could have never guessed back in 2019 or 2020 that I would be a publishing director for a publishing house. It's amazing how God can just take your dreams and amplify them in a way that you least expect.
Totally. It's you give him your yes, and he's like, okay, just watch what I do next and
Yeah.
see where this goes. And I can totally resonate with that. How God led me to Michelle Schaefer, which we built Girl Power Alliance, which is now Kingdom Alliance, and being a co-founder. I'm like, I never knew my yes there would expand into something that I have always dreamed of, even deeper than I even knew. And there's so many layers to it. So I love that you said that, because oftentimes we're scared to say that yes, but behind that yes is something so much more that we like truly long for. Which is amazing. So I love your background. I love where it's led you, and I can feel your passion for wanting to help people get their testimony out there. For me being a speaker, professional speaker coach, I love hearing people's stories. It's like you just light up when you see them light up as to what they've been able to overcome and break through. So I'm curious, is there anything that you can share with like people that are sitting there? They're like, okay, do I have a book inside me? Let's start there. Even to the people, of course, if you already have a book, there's great resources here for you. But 80% you said of Americans, which is a huge number, like, okay, do I have that book? And where do I go? Like, what are some, words of wisdom that you can share with people listening that are probably like, yes, that is me?
Mm-hmm. So I would say that everyone has a book inside of them, right? We all have stories. We just do, right? We've all gone through lived experiences. And one of the first things that I talk about in Kingdom Author Academy, which we haven't talked about yet, but one of the first things that I talk about is this idea that we are all overcomers. We have all overcome something. And once we can own that, and we can own that we have overcome a challenge or some sort of an experience in our lives, we can pass that on to someone else. And in some ways, it is our duty to pass it on to someone else, to show someone what's possible when you overcome things and that you can overcome things, right? So that's one, right? I believe everybody does have a story to tell. So if you feel called, that's all you need, right? All you need is that calling. All you need is that belief that you were meant to share your story. And then once you have that, it's about owning it and knowing how to get really clear on what that book is about, right? What is that actual book about? And planning it out in a way that makes it easy for you to be able to sit down and do the writing. And then it's just commitment. We all know that the thing that differentiates those who are successful from those who are not successful is the ability to take consistent action and to show up every day, right? There's the people that don't succeed. It's not because they're not able to succeed. It's because they're not willing to do the work. They're not willing to be consistent. And those micro steps that you're taking every single day are what lead to success. So when we look at people who are suddenly these huge authors, right, or they're super famous and super successful, people are only looking at the tip of the iceberg. They're not seeing all of the work and all of the commitment and dedication and doing it when you don't want to do it, right? Showing up and being disciplined even when you have zero desire to do it. That's not what people are seeing. They're seeing the end result, but it didn't happen overnight. So it just takes the commitment and it takes the desire and the work ethic to actually do it. And then I believe anybody can do that as long as they're willing to.
Yes, the will. That's so true. Because again, everybody sees the end result, just like you mentioned, but it's like the bottom part of the iceberg, the failure, the no's, the doubts, the naysayers, the everything that comes into play. I don't have time. I don't have this. Think about what you do have. And like you said, if you feel that nudge and you have the calling, like that's enough. And really digging into the why. Like there's a why behind that. And if you got to keep asking yourself why to get to the real why, then you will eventually be like, it doesn't matter about everything else. It's going to happen regardless, but let's push through. So let's kind of go there a little bit. You briefly brought up, and so did I, about the Kingdom Author Academy. This is a great place for people to start because there's a lot of callings out there and people probably now feeling that nudge again of that's me. This Author Academy is actually a really great place for people to start. And, you get to come in, you get to lead that. And so your passion gets to spill out on all of these people who are hungry to write. So tell us a little bit, what that is about.
So when I started book coaching, I started solely with one-on-one book coaching. And essentially what that was I would meet with clients to help them put together what is I call it my book activation master plan, right? Like I gave it like a fancy name, but really it's just a blueprint that you're going to put together for your book. Because I liken this to building a house, right? Or going on a road trip. Before you build a house, before you start laying bricks, you need to have our architectural plans. Before you go on a road trip, ideally, if you know where you're going, you need the roadmap for how you're going to actually get to your destination. So what we're doing is we're planning out the book. And I love that you brought up the why, because that is actually the first question that I have authors answer is, why do you want to write this book, right? You need to identify what the book is, but then why this book? What is it about this book that needs to be written? What is that burning desire inside of you, that thing that's keeping you up at night that needs to come out, right? So you have to answer the why. So inside of the academy, I do the very same thing I did with my one-on-one clients, and I just adapted it. So we're answering why you want to write the book after we've determined what kind of book you're writing, because we have to be really clear on, are you writing memoir? Is it a narrative nonfiction? Or is this a conventional nonfiction, like perhaps a self-help book, right? And in a lot of cases, believe it or not, it's a hybrid, because I encourage people to share stories so much that you can take a self-help book and really infuse a lot of your personal narratives or even client testimonies and do what I call a narrative, right? A narrative. So we have to first know, what is this book? And then we have to be able to answer the following question. So why do you want to write this book? What is the point of the book? If you're not clear on what the point is, your reader's not going to be clear on why they need to read it, right? Because you're always writing a book for the reader. You're not writing the book for yourself.
Right.
Just like when you're sharing your testimony, you're not sharing it for yourself. You're sharing your testimony to bring glory to God and to bring other believers to Christ. So we have to keep in mind that this is not for ourselves. This is for someone else, right? And I actually just saw a beautiful reel on Instagram where this pastor was talking about a fruit tree and how a fruit tree doesn't eat the fruit from its tree. A fruit tree drinks water, right? It only consumes water and sunlight. The fruit that the tree produces is not for itself. And so the fruit that we're producing in our writing isn't for us. It is for the reader, right? It is for those who are destined to read it. And so that is what's so important. And so that's like the next big question we need to be able to answer is, what is the point of this book? What is the thing that they're going to be able to walk away with when they're done reading it? And then we get into all the beautiful ideas of structure. And I'm actually going to be teaching the class after this. So today's class is going to be a lot about identifying the structure of your book and being able to put together a simple outline. And then after that, I really start diving deeper into the craft of writing and how to become a better writer and helping them really lay the foundation to be able to start writing with ease. Because once all of this groundwork is done, the writing comes through so much more easily because you sit down, you open your computer or you open up your journal, however you want to write, and you're clear on what it is you're saying, as opposed to, I want to write a book about 1,000 different things.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't know what I'm actually, that's where you have writer's block. You have writer's block when you're not clear about what it is that you're trying to say.
Gosh, I mean, there's so much of that because we're just trying to get it all out, which what's beautiful is when I have first, just as a speaker coach, help people to just start sharing their story. And like you said, get on like a clear path. Like, and when people get that, I feel like when they get that block, and I'd love to hear your take on this too, when they get that block, it's like, clearly you have a lot to say. So there is much that you want to get out, but it's knowing when and how, and like, what kind of story do you want to convey? Because a confused mind does nothing. And if people are confused, either you're going to stay stuck or your reader's going to stay stuck, which hopefully not, because Camille's going to help you with that. But there's going to be a clear narrative of like, this is what I want to convey and get across. And there's so many people where I'm like, the reason why you're stuck is because you have so much in there. It's waiting to come out and you keep stopping it up. It's like, let it come out. And then you'll see, wow, I didn't just have one big story. I had several that really could be split apart and really be powerful standalone stories. So I think that's so powerful to highlight because so many of us, I hear it all the time. Like I'll get on calls or talk with women. I'm like, wow, we haven't talked to somebody in a long time, have we? Like in the way of, I'm happy to be here and listen. However, there's so much inside of you begging to come out. What's the best way to now create an action plan for that to come out? So I love that you get to walk people through that to really just get so clear and then have that writing eventually flow out. So once somebody goes through this 7-week author academy to really get the structure, the bones, the why, and get this story starting to flow out, like what is the next step for them? Because obviously they want to get it into the hands of other people.
Yeah. So then there's two options from where they can go after the academy. They can choose to just put their head down and finish the writing. And once that writing is done, they can self-edit and they can then reach out to us about publishing, and we would go through all of the editing stages with them. Or we do offer the one-on-one book coaching that I do with my clients. We're offering it through the publishing house as a kind of an intermediary step. So you can actually have one-on-one book coaching whether you're going through the academy, because right, like what I'm teaching in the academy is what I do with one-on-one clients anyway. So if somebody wants more focused feedback and that one-on-one, those one-on-one interactions, a meeting, actually having me read it and give them feedback on it, then that is a good option that they can choose during the academy or right after. Because what I find is that a lot of people just fall off the wagon because they don't have the accountability. And what the one thing I've been able to do with the academy to basically take the place of me not being able to give everybody one-on-one feedback is what I call workshopping groups, right? So I did this in grad school. We would always exchange our writing with other classmates, and we would workshop each other's work. So we have created a space and a setting like that within the academy where we create these workshop groups so that you can get feedback from other authors, right? Or other people in the program. And they can choose to continue past the 7 weeks meeting with their workshop group. And that could be a great accountability group, because ultimately what you need is accountability, right? And so whatever you have to do to hold yourself accountable after those 7 weeks to finishing your writing is the main thing that you need to do. So whether it's one-on-one book coaching with me, whether it's keep maintaining that workshopping group, or maybe creating a separate group with someone else, you just need to do whatever it is that's going to keep you going and finishing the book. Because once your manuscript is done, then we're ready to start the publishing process, because we go through 3 rounds of edits. So people don't have to get so caught up in it's not a clean draft. The cleaner the draft, the easier the editing process is, right? And it can help you avoid additional rounds of edits if it's a really, really messy draft, because that messy first draft really should be super messy. So hopefully you'll go back and clean it up a little bit before you bring it to an editor, right? Which we do have all that editing in-house at the publishing house.
I love it. I love it. I mean, the accountability is the name of it all. I mean, at the end of the day, we can say, oh, I can't finish this because of this. And then it collects dust and all that work that you just did. You're like, shoot, now I have to pick it back up. Hold yourself accountable, but even better, like find somebody to hold you accountable that wants you to get it done as well. Because why wait for your story? Like, we've already waited this long for this to get out. Like, no more waiting. The time is now. And people are hungry for these kinds of stories, right? Like the stories that are coming out of the Author Academy, the publishing house, are stories that people really need to hear, that's going to help them in business, restore hope, deliverance, faith, just growth in general, and to really just inspire people. So yeah, before we close out, Camille, is there anything else that you would like to share anything at all, why you're excited about this, anything you'd like to share, future projects? I mean, there's so much that it can come from what it is that you guys have built, because we're in the beginning stages, but you're not working with beginners. Let me like highlight that piece. These are people that are seasoned, that know what they're doing. This is just the beginning of a beautiful movement of helping more kingdom stories get out there. So anyways, I know that was kind of a lot, but anything else you'd like to say before we end?
So anything else? So I would just say that, and this is something even that I have had to come up against, right? Is this idea of, I have an idea, I'm getting it started, but then I'm dropping the ball and I'm not following through. And so what we want is to encourage you. That's why we have the Author Academy. That's why we have the publishing house, and we have all of these resources available to authors so that they can see it through to completion. We don't want you to sit on your story for decades and wish, right? Like, this is actually one of my biggest fears. I used to always say this, like, my biggest fear would be not having written that book that God called me to write. And I have one that I'm currently finishing. I've been working on it for a long time. And like, I know that this is a command from the Lord to share this. And if I die without having done that, I will have failed him. I will have let him down, right? Because he calls us to be stewards, to be good stewards of our stories and of the resources and the things that he's given us. And our story is a resource that God has given us to share with others. And so I think the biggest thing is we have the resources that you need to succeed here at Kingdom Alliance. And I just encourage you to do the thing in obedience and surrender to God. Because when you do, life is so much better. Life is so much more joyful when you actually do what God is calling you to do, as opposed to getting in your head, allowing the enemy to stop you from living out your purpose and your will and
Yes,
God's
I
will for your
love that
life.
you ended with that because I saw something recently and it's so true. It's like success isn't the strategy and the money and the hype and the fame and all that. It's you walking out your calling. What God has
Mhm.
called you to do. That is the success. Like that truly is it. And you'll have more peace. You'll feel more fulfilled because you're doing the things He's calling you to do that only you can do. So, Camille, we're excited for your book to come out. Can't wait to read that. But thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been super enlightening. It's amazing to have somebody with your level of expertise, be able to be at the helm to guide these people into creating the best story that they can so it can get into the hands of more people who need to read them. So thank you so much for what you're doing at Kingdom Alliance Publishing House, the Author Academy, and so much more. And thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. It means the world to me that you would lean in, listen in, and be able to hear the value that's being shared on this show. Don't forget, if you love this episode, rate the show, leave me a review, be sure to share it with a friend, and don't forget to tag me on social media. I will definitely be giving you a shout out. Also, come say hi, drop in the DMs. I would love to be able to hear what stood out to you the most on the episode and if there's any topics that you would like to hear on the show. We'll see you next time.